Hello, everyone. This is Sincere of Teacher Sincere's channel, and welcome. In a future video, I plan to show the platform and explain the platform that I teach on. I work for a company or edtech group called Cambly Incorporated. I'm an independent contractor, and I am an EFL teacher, or English as a Foreign Language teacher. The majority of my students are Turkish, Saudi, Brazilian, and Japanese. And I do teach some other, on occasion, other nationalities as well. But generally, my regulars, they are in that group. Recently, I gained even more students. I opened up my schedule for more hours, and I've gained even more students. So my schedule tends to be filled when I'm online teaching. It's been really rewarding teaching online. Now, of course, if you the better thing is to be able to be in a country and being able to go to another country and teach. I think for me that's the best thing. But if you cannot travel, if you say you cannot leave your country, or like I had older parents, elderly parents, it just wasn't a good idea to leave them. I before my father died 2 years ago, I started feeling less and less comfortable with the idea of going back and teaching abroad because he had gotten old. I noticed I needed some. I know they needed someone to be around so they could be, driven to the doctor, all of that, because my father had gotten to where he was too old and frail to be out there trying to drive. And my mother never learned how to drive. So I really needed to be at home. But by the suggestion of my father, this was right after I came back from Turkey back in 2016, I believe, the last time I was there teaching. He brought up, why don't you teach online? Is it a way you could teach online? I ran across an article by a young woman shortly after then talking about teaching online, and she had gotten her own students on her own. But I wasn't aware at that time of that there were many online companies, and these companies were beginning to sprout up at that time. And I did do some searching, and I ran across one company, and then I applied, and I forgot about it. And then I applied to maybe a couple of other companies, and then I just sort of forgot about it. And so eventually I heard from one, and the one I heard from that wanted to interview me was located in Hanoi, Vietnam. And I ended up working for them for almost 5 years. The current company I'm with, it's getting close to 3 years of working for them, teaching for them. I teach on the platform. The first company, the technology was not as good. The sound quality was not as good. It would be breaking up a lot of times. We had to have a technician send us into the virtual classroom, and we couldn't see our students. We could teach up to 6 students, but we couldn't see them because they were located in different cities in Vietnam, sometimes different countries in Southeast Asia. And so it was the technology with more of the teaching online was developing at that time. This was around 2017. Um, so now the technology is much better, but I only teach one-on-one now. Now my current what I currently the company I currently work for, they very recently opened up where we can do group students, but I haven't tried that yet. There are actually um, two portions of the company. I work for the main part where you teach ages 15 and up, and then there's like Cambly Kids, which is ages I think ages 5 to 14. I think that's how it goes. So, but I want to mention this because while teaching online, I have met some really extraordinary people. Okay. The times I did teach abroad, I only taught in Botswana years ago. That was like basically high school through Peace Corps, and Botswana is near South Africa. It borders South Africa. It borders a bunch of countries, Zimbabwe and Mozambique and Namibia, and yeah. But that's another story. Um, And then I've taught in Turkey. I've taught in 3 different cities in Turkey. Um, if I had to do it over again, looking back, if I had, because I've really learned a lot with my current position. Um, I've had There are a lot of Arab students on there, and I wasn't sure about the Arab countries, and I was, I wasn't worried so much about, the restrictions being a female, but I didn't know, what was their attitude toward, quote, black people. I didn't know. But now, looking back and the experiences I've had with Arab students on the platform, and also looking at YouTube channels of some people that are African Americans that are teaching in Arab countries, I would definitely say I would teach probably in somewhere like Saudi Arabia or Abu Dhabi or Oman or Qatar. And then because the pay would be much much better than Turkey. Turkey was a very good experience. It opened up a lot of things for me, and I learned a lot. But economically, if I knew what I know now, I would not teach there, because the pay is not good. It is not good. And with the kind of pay that I could have made teaching in the Arab countries, I could have taught, traveled even more in Turkey. I've seen a good portion of Western Turkey, but there are places I want to visit, particularly in the East, like Mardin, Kars. I have a friend that's a professor. She teaches in Kars. That's her hometown. She studied here in my hometown. Black Sea region I want to visit, and also Cappadocia. But I really would like to visit portions of the East. I want to visit Antakya, but Antakya got destroyed by the earthquake back earlier this year. And Antakya is a very important city historically for Christianity. It's called Antioch. But anyway, I'm talking about a lot of things, and this is sort of a rambling video, and it's impromptu. But anyway, um, so um, I have had some really great experiences with students. Uh, some of my students are very extraordinary people. Um, I have one student in Brazil. He is a lawyer. His wife is an architect, and they live in their home is made of 2 storage containers, shipping containers. The big shipping containers that you see on ships. Their home is 2 shipping containers put together. They painted it black, and she and he designed their home. And then a few months ago, he gave me a virtual tour of his home. He's a really sweet guy. He is of Sicilian ancestry. Brazil is extremely ethnically diverse. I had believed that Brazil was mostly, that's mostly what we're told. We are told so little about so many countries. But Brazil, I thought it was mostly made up of Portuguese people, people of African descent, and mixed race people. But this is not the only. The population is extremely diverse, and so he is Sicilian, and I'm not sure. His wife's name also looks Italian looking, so I'm thinking she might be Sicilian or Italian. But there are a lot of people down there that are Italian and Sicilian, and there's a lot of different ethnic groups there. They have the largest community of Lebanese. Outside of Lebanon, there are people there of Japanese ancestry, Chinese, just a lot of German. The place is very ethnically and racially diverse. So, excuse me. But he gave me a tour of his home. He's really a sweet person. Um, he is studying. He wants to change over. He wants to change his profession from law to engineering. His brother is an engineer, and he wants to become an engineer. So he's studying for that. His wife is an architect. On her Instagram page, she has some of her work. Beautiful work for people's homes. Just absolutely great. And he's such a nice person. And I think because he has suffered so much, because he's a young man and he has battled cancer, and his cancer is in remission. Um, I think when people have suffered that way or suffered in different ways, it makes suffering can either make you or break you. Okay, it can either make you into a monster, and make you to just a horrible person, or it can make you into a very good person. It's the way people perceive suffering, and And from a Christian perspective, Christian people that are knowledgeable understand that suffering is a part of life and you're not going to escape it. And you make the best of it and you try to become a better person. But yeah, he's a good person, a nice guy, and we talk. And he has invited me to come and visit them, to stay with them. He gave me a virtual tour inside and outside his home, and it's stunning. It's absolutely neat where he lives. Um, and then I have another student. She lives in eastern Turkey. She lives about an hour's drive from Syria. She lives in a village outside the city of Mardin. And Mardin is a very unique city in Turkey. It has a long history. Um, there are a lot of people in Mardin. The population is heavily Arab. Arab people have been living in that area in Turkey much more longer than the Turks. I mean, this is even before. This is they've been there before Christ. They really have. It's a long, very long history. There's about 2 million Arabs in Turkey. Now, this student is not Turkish. It's not Arab. Though. She's Kurdish, and she is 26 years old, and she owns a pharmacy. She owns her own pharmacy at 26 years old. She went to school and studied in Istanbul, and she lives with her family. She was her English, her reading is better than her spoken English, but she really tries to express deep thoughts in English. We were talking yesterday during a lesson, and she comes again today, and she was talking about that, people. I had chosen an article for her about mental health because she's interested in health. She said, I love reading about health. I'm interested in health. And so I found an article about that in the coming years, 75% of the world's population will suffer from some sort of mental illness. And it's already here. She was talking about it. I had a young Chinese woman back several weeks ago. She was talking about the problem with mental illness in her country. And yeah, you see it. It's, when people do a lot of excessive type things and go overboard with things, that's a big sign when they don't have any balance in their life, when they can't see things from a normal perspective, from a balanced perspective. That's a big sign of mental illness. Big sign of mental illness. So mental illness is a big thing now. And so we were talking about it, and she was saying, she was saying basically, I'll put it in the words that she said, but not, I'll put it in, my words, basically what she said. I'll paraphrase because like I said, her English is, sort of not good, her spoken English. So she was basically saying that years ago people had less, but they were much happier. And now they have more and they are far more unhappy. When I gave her the article, she was like, yes, yes, I want to read this. I said, you want to read this? Because normally I don't pick material for my students. I let them pick their own material. But I decided I'm going to probably start doing it more in some cases. For some students, letting them do it, but most of them are absolutely happy choosing their own materials that they want to work with. So, and then I have a whole big supply of materials, a whole library that I have of materials that I use online with my students. But she was saying now people have so much and they're unhappy and they want more and more, and they think that will make her happy. And I just thought it was amazing. 26 years old, and I've noticed this. Um, in the last number of years that I've worked more and more with people internationally, I've run across young people online, not many, but some, and also teaching, that are very, very wise. I have a friend in Iraq. Um, she's getting close to 30 now, and she say some really great things. I said, "Wow!" I said, "When I was your age, I didn't, I didn't know anything, and stuff. My wisdom became much later, much more later. How I see life, and how I see life, and how my understanding of life, and what life is, and why I am here, and why we are here." It changed in the last number of years. So I was late coming with mine, but I prayed for it. I prayed for wisdom. But these young people are very, very wise. This young woman who lives in a village outside of Martin, we talk, sometimes we talk about very personal things. She was saying that in her village, she said, people don't, she said over here on this side, People don't care about anything, but she's my village. She don't care about anything but money and gossip. She wants, she thinks more deeply. She wants the people around her to think more deeply about things. Think about things that really, really matter. And she was, we were talking about marriage. She said, yes, she would like to be married. She said, there's nobody here I would want to marry in my village. She said, but I would like to be married. She said, I said, would you want to marry somebody that's highly educated, wealthy? She said, I'm not worried about the money. She said, I want to marry somebody that, that somebody who really is a person who's basically intellectual type person, a thinker, a person who doesn't operate like the average person. That's what she wants. And I don't blame her. I mean, that is, we don't have a lot of deep thinkers. The average person is not a deep thinker. An average person is more like people talk about, oh, I go think by my gut thinking. I'm like, no, that's not the way to think. Life is about a lot of strategizing. Um, and a lot of times you'll hear some men say, oh, women, they're emotional, how they think, and blah, blah, blah. I see a lot of men that are emotional. They don't think very clearly. They don't think about the repercussions of what they do. What they don't think about what I'm doing now is going to have. They don't think about the results, the consequences further up the road. But yeah, I've met some very fascinating people. We have some deep conversations, my students and I. And I'm not the only one on the platform that has these experiences. They're my colleagues. We have a teachers forum on Facebook, and people on the forum talk about. Some of them actually have met some of their students. They end up meeting their students. I hope eventually there are some of my students that I would like to meet. I don't know if it will happen, but God willing. But back to this young woman, um, she also gave me a virtual tour of her pharmacy. She called one night and I said, "Oh, you're sitting outside." A couple of times she's called, she's been sitting outside in their yard in the village, and another time she was sitting on the street in Martin because her village is in Martin. She says her village is about a 10-minute drive um, from Martin. And so she was sitting outside on the street, outside of her business. I've seen Turkish men, seen people in Turkey sit outside their businesses, but they have their own private small business. They sit outside, some of them. And so she was sitting outside and we were talking. I said, "Where are you?" She said, "I'm here in Martin. I'm sitting here outside my business, my pharmacy." And then she said, "You want to see inside?" So she got up and she went inside and she gave me a quick virtual tour. And she had several guys working for her. They were waving, smiling, and I waved back at them and I was saying hello. And it was just a great experience. But um, what I also love is that it took many, many years because, living here in the United States, she was talking about where she grew up and people don't care about much. They don't think about the deeper things in life. It was the same with me. I grew up in a small southern town of African Americans and white Americans. And all people mostly cared about here was money, football, and alcohol, and a party. That's about it. That's about all they cared about. Um, Now, my grandparents on my mother's side was very much like people, Middle Eastern people. They had standards. They were protective of their daughters. Um, they were very much like. And I'll talk maybe in another video about my grandfather and how when I met these people from the Middle East, Muslim people, and talked to them and learned how they were raised and everything. It was very much how I was raised. And so it took, I was in my 40s before I really met other people that, first priority as a person is their child. They wanted them to be educated, and then everything else came after that. Okay. My friend The Rock was telling me one time, she said, she was saying that she said, I have to be in by 9:30. I'm an Arab lady. I said, nothing is wrong with that. I said, nothing absolutely is wrong with that. Nothing at all is wrong with that. I said, I couldn't be out late. I said, I didn't have much freedom until I was about 30 years old. And I had another long conversation the other day with a new student from Saudi Arabia. He is a lawyer and he's studying in England. And we were talking about the difference, the perception of the protection of women. How, because a lot of people, you'll see comments online and people saying comments about people in the Arab countries and the stricter Arab countries, because all the Arab countries have a different level of strictness. Okay. And even in Turkey, even though you have the country sort of split, where you have a very liberal element and people are westernized, you have a very strict, you have a very conservative element in Turkey. In fact, my friend is a professor in cars. When she was going to school here, she was very religious, but she did not wear the headscarf, because at that time in Turkey, wearing a headscarf, it was much more difficult, and working on the job, you could not wear a headscarf. Now they can. And But she when I was talking, the first time I talked to her after my father died. She had we talked on Skype, and she had on her headscarf. I said, "You start wearing your hijab," and she said, "Yes." And so I think this is wonderful, because you need standards. Um, if you do not have standards, you're open to all kinds of vultures out here, particularly if you're a woman. And I just, this was just a rambling video that was on my heart, that I felt like I needed to talk about. And some of my students have very, very high standards. And I think it's very important that you have these high standards, that women should be protected, and that you should um, uh, not feel that you can do anything in life, that you protect yourself from certain things, um, and have discernment and say, this is what I should do and what I should not do, what I should stay away from. So I think it's been a very great experience. And since I would definitely prefer working in another country if I could, but I think it's a very great experience to be able to uh, teach these people and learn from their cultures, and to be able to encounter people that are thinking people, highly sensitive people, that are sensitive and sensible people, and people that have high standards for themselves, and do not just go along with what the masses of people say, but life is just a party, and we just have a good time, and that's it. I think it's very important to have high standards and to protect yourself in this life. We have to have standards. So that's all I have to say. I'm going to end here. Thank you for listening to this video. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. So this is Sincere. Until next time.